This guy, his boat would dock down in the Cumberland, and his men would head straight up to that red light district. In fact, where that big hotel is going up, one of the buildings that they sadly knocked down on the front side dated back to the 1880s, and it was a club called the Climax Saloon that belonged to Captain Tom. It was a gambling parlor, a saloon, and a bordello all rolled into one. So late in his life, though, he got religion. And when he did, he swore off all of his vices. He sold his riverboat business, he sold his club, took all of his money, and he sunk it into this, the Union Gospel Tabernacle. That was the original name of this building. And Captain Tom built it for the fire and brimstone preacher who had saved his soul, a guy named Sam Jones. So for the first 14 years of its life, this was Sam's church, where you find the stage today. That was a pulpit. The pulpit was surrounded by these curved oak pews. Still the same seating in here today, after 100 and some years. After Tom passed on in 1904, they renamed the building in his honor. It became the Ryman Auditorium. Now, it was a church up until about 1920, even with that name, but to help pay the rent on off nights, they started opening it up to more secular events, like plays and concerts. And I collect old playbills, and I'm always astounded by the people who performed here before the opera even arrived. Charlie Chaplin, W.C. Fields were on the stage, the Marx Brothers, Harry Houdini, Rachmaninoff, Enrico Caruso. I mean, just an incredible, even presidents, Teddy Roosevelt was here, Woodrow Wilson. And then the thing that really ends up putting on the map is the Grand Ole Opry, which, like I said, was here in 1943, had a very long run, and then in 1974, vacated the premises and moved out to Opryland. So for those of you guys that are going to the Opry tonight, you're going to see it in what I call its new home, but actually it's been there longer than it was here. So I want to talk a little bit about Hank Williams today. And I think I'll, just to make it a little more comfortable for us, I'll lead us over here in the shade, get out of the sun. Just these brief moments of vitamin D consumption are good. So guys, I want to talk about Hank Williams. To my mind, probably the greatest country singer and songwriter of all times. And Hank Williams has a really complicated relationship with Nashville and with the Ryman. So just to give you a little bit of background, by the late 1940s, Hank was definitely the biggest thing in country music. Hit after hit, selling tons of records, and yet by 1949, he had never once appeared on the Grand Ole Opry show. And it reached a point where country fans started to ask why, pretty vocally, and the Ryman Auditorium and the Grand Ole Opry issued a statement that said, we're a family-friendly entertainment. We don't want a guy on our show who's hard drinking, who's a womanizer, who's a roustabout. No thanks. Well, most of the guys on the Opry fit that description pretty well back then. But Hank, I think, made them nervous because he was a little bit more out in the open, getting into scrapes with cops and crashing cars and things. Finally, he forced their hand. In 1950, he had a record that was recorded here in Nashville called Lovesick Blues. 16 weeks straight at number one on the country charts. Unprecedented. And in the middle of that run, the Opry said, we should really give him a chance. So they invited Hank onto the show. And right away, right from the sound check in the afternoon, there was trouble. So Hank was running through the songs he was going to do that night, one of which was called My Bucket's Got a Hole in It. And the chorus in that song goes, my bucket's got a hole in it, and I can't buy no beer. The Opry managers heard that word and they said, stop. They ran onto the stage and said, Hank, you can't sing that word, not on our show, which really goes to show you how much country music has changed. Everything these days is reference and drinks, So they said, you need to change it. How about we change it to buttermilk? Hank was like, okay, fine. So come showtime, he's up there smiling and winking at the audience. I can't buy no, and everybody's laughing because they know the real words. Yeah. And then the song ends, and Hank says, oh yeah, the Opry made me change it, which not a good way to get started. He's calling him out. So he starts playing. Things are going well, but a new problem emerges, which is Hank Williams' wife, Audrey Williams, beautiful lady, inspiration for a lot of his great songs. She was kind of like Lucy Ricardo on the old I Love Lucy show. This is a woman who wanted to be in show business, didn't have a lick of talent. And I had read this in books for years, like that Audrey was a bad singer, she couldn't sing. And then I found a clip of her on YouTube. Whew, man, talk about cringeworthy, But here's what she would do. She was very charming and very pretty. She would pay the band members in Hank's band to learn a song for her special, and then unannounced, she would run onto the stage in the middle of his set and start singing. And there was Hank, hearing her through the ears of love, just kind of smiling. But everyone in the audience was like, what is this? Who is this person? The Opry was very uncomfortable, but they couldn't have Hank without having Audrey. The bigger problem that started to really emerge is Hank's drinking. Now, you guys probably, when you think about Hank Williams, you think, yes, he drank himself to death. Well, maybe, but there's a larger context here. Hank Williams had spina bifida. He had a lifetime of chronic pain. And in 1950, he was out hunting. He slipped and fell, he hurt his back, and he had some surgery here at Vanderbilt University that didn't go well. The last 2 years of his life, he was in excruciating pain. The only way he could get through the day was morphine and alcohol. And like Elvis, he had a lot of doctors who were enablers who he could call and just get whatever pill he needed. All of this was problematic for his relationship with the Opry because by 1951-52, he was showing up here a lot of times unfit to get on the stage, almost legless, to the point where one too many bad performances, and the Opry said, we're going to cut you loose because, we can't depend on you. We know the audience loves you. Clean up your act, and we'll be happy to take you back. Well, sadly, 5 months later, Hank was dead. New Year's Day, like I said, 1953, 29 years old. Which again, you talk about Buddy Holly, 22, but all of these guys who did so much, and I think Hank, in a way, seems even more remarkable because when you look at him, he almost looks like he was twice that age, and his music had a kind of deeper emotional element that definitely speaks to somebody who had lived a lot more than 29 years. So the epilogue to this story is that to this day, Hank Williams has never been reinstated on the Grand Ole Opry. And his son, Hank Jr., lives here. His grandkids live here. For years, they've been trying to address this. There's a thing called Reinstate Hank with petitions and T-shirts and bumper stickers. But for whatever reason, the Opry has never reinstated Hank Williams, which is interesting because for years, this building has a lot of ghosts associated with it, but I've interviewed several country performers, Brad Paisley and Bill Anderson come to mind, both who claim that they've seen what looked to be Hank Williams' ghost in this building, And even I interviewed an old-time usher here. This guy was probably in his 80s. This was about 10 years ago, and he told me he was doing the rounds in here one night. There wasn't a show. And he heard the voice of Hank Williams just singing. And he couldn't figure out, there was no radio, no stereo going, and he just kept following it. And he said, he got to the backstage and it just stopped. So all kinds of things with Hank Williams, and talking about unfinished business again, and I think until the Opry does the right thing and allows him to be part of the show, even symbolically again, that he might still haunt this building. But I really wanted to talk about Hank today because I've been reading a wonderful book by a guy named Colin Escott called I Saw the Light. It was sort of the basis for that movie. Not so good movie, but the book is great. All about Hank. So thanks for letting me talk about that today. We're going to go around the corner on our way to Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. I want to say that the Opry and the Ryman are huge subjects. These are book-worthy subjects, so I can only scratch the surface here. If there's anything you guys want to know about, any questions you might have, please, I would be happy to address them, answer them if I could. Anything on your mind? Okay. Well, if you have a chance while you're here in town, I don't know how long y'all are staying, to hear music here, please do take it. I know on Thursday nights they have a show called Opry Country Classics, where it's some of the older stars of the Opry, usually hosted by the Gatlin brothers. That's a great show if you have something open on Thursday night. And also, just to get to be in here, you know, the acoustics are so great, the vibe of the place. It's really a magical venue. As somebody who lives in Mount Juliet, I would imagine you've probably seen some shows here.
I've seen the Mavericks.
Mavericks.
That's the last show I saw here.
Fantastic.
So you hear stories about Tootsies and this building being tied together.
Yeah, when we get back around the alley, I'll tell you how.
Oh, okay. I think they play here in like almost a full schedule here during the winter. Is that what they do?
Well, I mean, the Opry comes back here in December and January because there's an ice show on Opryland.
Oh, yeah.
So that venue is sort of closed down for the months. So Friday and Saturday nights, and usually the Opry back here, which is really cool seeing it here. You know, I think it adds a whole other thing.
I've seen photographs of where this looks like maybe the original.
This was the original, yes. So as this fellow's saying, this was the original entrance from the 40s through the 70s. When they renovated this place in the 90s, they built that box office where we were standing, basically as a way to sort of welcome people in with a gift shop and a snack bar, but more because they used to have to close down the streets, you know, on Friday and Saturday nights because people would, you see old pictures of people just crowded out, spilling out to the streets. But yes, this was the original entrance. And, you know, it gets confusing. When I first moved to Nashville, the old sign was still up. It said, "Welcome to the Grand Ole Opry," and I used to look at this building and think, that's the Grand Ole Opry. But the Grand Ole Opry is a radio show that most famously happened here at the Ryman, and now, to make it even more confusing, it's performed at the Grand Ole Opry House. But if you're trying to keep it straight, the Grand Ole Opry